Hey, what's up, everyone? This is just another one of our live streaming Q&A sessions where anybody that's in the live chat is welcome to ask questions, and I'll be happy to answer them, and we'll just see where it goes from there. I'll be sticking around for the next maybe 30, 45, maybe in the next hour. Yeah, so I'll be hanging out, and if you have any questions, ask in the live chat, and we'll go from there. Jimena Raval, hi Ian, love from India. Hey buddy, how's it going? Happy to see you here. Appreciate it. Haseen, hi man, hey, how's it going? Jamit, got a job after learning web development from your boot camp. Thanks to me. Well, that makes me feel really good. But it's really, you're the one that did all the hard work. So you should pat yourself on the back and congratulations. I'd love to hear more about your experience with all that, the interview, and what kind of job it is and everything. So if you want to leave some comments, that'd be awesome. I'm sure other people would be interested to hear about your new job as well. But congratulations again. That's really great. Fantastic job. All right, we got a question. Do you know how long after reaching 1,000 does it take before you can live stream from your mobile? Sorry, I don't have a good answer for that. I just recently started live streaming, and so I wasn't aware that there was a limit on it. I guess that makes sense. But it's probably something that you'll want to look up in the YouTube FAQ. John's question is, would you be willing to give feedback on my portfolio design? Yeah, share the link and we can look at it right now. Yeah, take your time, no problem. My shoulder's kind of hurting right now, so I'll probably be doing a lot of this number. All right, so we have a question in the meantime from Joshua Lynch. Do you think it's best to take a full stack developer role for my first job, or should I take a role focused on back end or front end for my first role? I mean, if you're in a position where you're being offered a full stack position or role, then I would say just take it. Obviously, you want it to be well paid and everything like that. But um, if you have an opportunity like that where you can pick and choose, that's fantastic. But most people who are getting their first entry level position don't necessarily have the ability to just have options like that. So I'm not saying you have to pick the first job that comes your way, but if you have an opportunity like that, I would definitely jump on it. Whether it's full stack or back end or front end, you're going to learn a lot either way. So definitely take advantage of that. So Jimena earlier was saying that he had landed a job after taking the course. He says, after completing my engineering, I purchased Web Developer Bootcamp from Udemy by Colt and Ian, spending 1 month of time to learn from course and make one personal project and then appear for an interview. And then he got a job. That's really amazing. Well done. Congrats. Joshua, no problem. Yeah. So front end or back end, it's really up to you which direction you want to go in. But if you did full stack, then I think you'd have more experience with each, and then you'd be able to decide later, like, you know what, I'm not really digging the back end. I think I'll focus more on front end with like your second job. So especially in web development, your first job is not going to be your be all end all unless it's just some amazing, dream job that you just don't want to go anywhere else, and that's great, especially if there's growth within the company. But typically, that first job, you'll have anywhere from 6 months to a year, up to 2 years, and then you'll take that experience and you'll segue into another job that pays more and maybe has some more appealing conditions. What do I think about Node.js? They say JavaScript is not stable enough. Who are they, and stable enough for what? So that's a pretty broad statement. You'd have to kind of zero in on what you're referring to, and then also kind of let me know who your sources are. But if there's a video that came out not too long ago, where the guy that basically made let's see here, I think he's one of the original creators of Node. He was like talking about a lot of his regrets and stuff, but that's going to be for any language. Like, any language is going to have some gotchas and some things that can be improved. Obviously, there's some languages that have been around forever and they're battle tested and tried and true. But I think what I would say in terms of someone saying that JS is not stable enough, okay, you're saying it's not stable enough for the back end and that your developer friends are saying that. I would say that's a biased opinion, in that it's going to be fine for some things and then not fine for others. So it just really depends. I'm like constantly like beating this idea into the ground, but I'm always answering this question on the Q&As where I'm telling people that all of these things that you're learning, JavaScript and PHP and Python, etc., like, they're all just tools. And so one may work better for one tool, one task rather, one project, and another may work better for another. So if you're doing like automation, then even though you can do automation with Node, you might want to use Python just because it's more geared towards that sort of thing. Or a combination of the two. I've used JavaScript, front-end JavaScript with Python to do automation, but it's just, what are the limitations of your language or stack that you're using, and then is there something else that does it better? And if so, then you might want to consider the other option. So I would take everything that people say with a grain of salt, especially when it comes to programming. People love to be biased about stuff. I'll comment here in a second on this question that just got dropped in about React or Angular, but like, that's a good example. People are like, oh, React 100%, forget Angular, it's terrible, but that's not true. React and Angular are really close to being neck and neck. Maybe React's in the lead right now. Last year it wasn't, or the year before it wasn't. Maybe Angular will make a comeback, who knows? But the point is, even though they're similar, they're not necessarily the right tool for a specific job, or they are and the other is not. So it always comes down to, like, what are the specifications of your project, and then what's going to help you meet those goals most efficiently and quickly, and if you're a startup, then your goals are different than a corporation, and so you're going to choose your stack accordingly or your language accordingly. So anyway, I say all that to say, try not to get biased about stuff. Always keep an open mind. Don't think like, oh, I'm a Node.js developer, so I don't care about any of these other languages. They all suck. You're gonna want to branch out and learn other stuff so that you can complete other tasks that Node.js is not good for. So no, Node is not good for everything, but as far as the back end for like a website or a web application, it works just fine in most cases. Shivam Sharma is asking, should I learn jQuery as I heard it is obsolete now? So I've answered this question in almost every live Q&A. Happy to answer it again though. No, you don't have to learn it, but it's not going anywhere super fast. I wouldn't say it's obsolete, but for the front end, unless you're just doing some small little DOM manipulation, you're probably going to want to go with an overhaul and use something like React, which is a front end. It's a library, but it essentially acts like a framework because of how large the ecosystem is. But if you are like, you wouldn't want to use jQuery to make your whole front end dynamic. Instead, you would want to use a framework. It just makes more sense, or a large library like React. But jQuery is good for certain things, and you're going to see it in some legacy code, even some modern code, just depending on the company, size of the company, what that company's goals are. So should you like go out of your way to learn it? Probably not, but I will say it only takes like a day or two to get the fundamentals of it down, especially if you already know JavaScript, and it can be really useful. So it's a nice little tool to have in your back pocket. I use it from time to time just because it takes the guesswork out of, I mean, I'll put it this way. You can either spend your time learning all the vanilla JavaScript ways of writing something, which is not a bad investment of your time, or if you don't want to worry about figuring out all the minutia of that, you can use jQuery, which does all that for you. But there's trade-offs because jQuery has larger file size. And so if you're using that in a production application, then you could be having a trade-off with the load time of your web page. So those are things you have to think about. But in terms of, is it something that you need to learn right now today? If you don't already know it, it's not. All right, so do you think it's better to learn something like React to enrich my web techniques, or just get more familiar with what I'm learning from the Udemy course? So when you say the Udemy course, I assume you're talking about Colt Steele's The Web Developer Bootcamp. It really depends on your goals, Weiwei. I think that if you want to be a front-end developer, then you're going to need to learn something like React or Angular. But if your goals are just to strengthen your back-end skills or learn more about programming in general through web development, then it wouldn't hurt to continue down in that direction as well. So like that's what my Code with Node course does, which by the way is free on Udemy and devsprout.io. And I'll have that link in the description for this video whenever it's done editing. But yeah, to answer your question, it's really up to you and what your goals are. Again, if you want a front-end position or even a full-stack position that leans heavily on a front-end framework, then you're going to have to learn something like React. But do you have to learn it right away? No, not if you're not comfortable or at that level yet. You could definitely continue on building on what you already know. So then the next one, React or Angular for the future. I can't predict that. Who knows? I mean, there's Vue too. Don't forget about Vue and whatever other little frameworks are out there. And then there's stuff like Svelte, which is, now that I think of it, I don't know if Svelte's front end. But point being, there's always something new that's coming out. But something new could come out and overtake both of those. You never know. I mean, these frameworks are fairly new in the last 5 years to a decade, and who knows if they'll be here in the next 5 years to a decade. So web development moves really quickly. Technology moves really quickly. Maybe those things will get expanded on. So it's hard to say. But right now it looks like React is really more popular than Angular. But again, that's only for a specific situation. Angular might be more popular in a certain niche or industry, whereas React may be more popular among like startups and things like that. So Justice is wondering which career path would I advise that you go down to focus on between mobile and web development. From my experience, which would you say is more lucrative? So It depends. I mean, if you learn regular web development and you learn JavaScript really well, then you can pick up something like React Native or Ionic, one of these frameworks that allows you to use JavaScript and HTML to and CSS, of course, to build out mobile applications that work on both, natively Android, iOS, but then also you could have a web component there. Um, so lucrative wise, I think you'd be fine in either direction. You can look at the numbers and the statistics and see um, which one would be more lucrative, but it just depends on, are you trying to work full time, like 9 to 5 somewhere, 40 hours a week, or are you trying to work for yourself? Are you trying to work remotely from home? Are you trying to go to an office? Like, once you have those questions answered, then you can just look at the companies that are offering these various technologies. So you can look at a company that specializes in mobile web app or mobile application development, or another company that specializes in web apps, and you can determine which one is going to have the better salary. And of course, then you have to do the whole interviewing process. But you have to answer some questions to yourself first about like what your intentions and goals are. So I'm following tutorials. I understand the fundamentals, but when I try to solve tasks on sites like Edibit, I don't know what to do. Any suggestions? All right, I have to figure out how to kick this full because apparently somebody is spamming. And I've also, here we go. Let's say hide this user. Hopefully that, and then also remove. All right, cool. Hopefully that deleted everything from whoever that user is trying to spam. So let me go back up here and see if I can get back to the questions that we were just on. Quite a few of them coming in, so this is good. Good to see everybody. I guess weekends are good for most people, so duly noted. Definitely try to get one of these out once every weekend for sure. I've been doing them during the week, but of course people are in work and school and things like that. So, all right, suggestions on, you understand the fundamentals, but when you try to solve tasks on sites, I don't know what that site is that you mentioned, but I'm assuming you mean like Code Wars or something. Then you don't know what to do. So that stuff comes with time. You'll want to start with the easier stuff, and then once you have those design patterns and different methods of solving these problems down, then eventually you can gradually get to the more difficult stuff. So even someone like myself, who's been programming for, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years now with like really intensive programming, as opposed to like being in web development for over a decade, I still struggle with just sitting down and solving these problems. But what I have, as opposed to someone who's just getting started, is I have methods that I use to solve this stuff. So I make sure that I'm pseudo coding, writing out the steps in human readable comments. Like, this is what the program should do. Now I just got to figure out the code to make it do that. And that helps you plan things out. And then, of course, if you're by yourself, you can always do rubber duck debugging, which I talk about quite a bit, where you get your rubber duck or your toy. This is my baby son's, his name's Clip Clop. So you get the toy, whatever it may be, and then you just talk to it and say, all right, listen, Clip Clop, here's the deal. I'm trying to make this program that does X, Y, and Z, and I'm to this point, and I've done this step, and I think it should do this, but it's giving me this error. And the only reason I can think that it give me that error is this, but I've tried that, and oh, you know what, now that I've said it out loud to you, that makes me think maybe I should try this. And then you put Clip Clop down and you get back to coding and you try those things. And so you'd be surprised how getting out of your head and just trying to solve it in your head and actually saying it out loud, how useful it can be. So once you have those types of things down where you're doing rubber duck debugging and you're doing pseudo coding, and you're really leveraging your ability to Google for stuff and look through Stack Overflow and kind of weed through the junk that isn't useful and isn't helpful and the stuff that is, and read documentation, those are the skills that once you build on them, then you can go in and do these different tasks on these different sites. And basically, the world's your oyster at that point. You can basically code whatever you want to. within the limits of whatever your skill set is. So that's stuff that I would focus on. Have I ever used backend Scala? No, I have not. Chewy, 3 months into my web dev journey, would you recommend going freelance as soon as possible, or what, until I get some employment experience, then break off? Yeah, if you can get into freelance and you enjoy that kind of work, it's a good time. The important thing is that you get paid what you're worth. So don't think that just because you're just getting into it that you're not worth anything. Maybe your first job or two you do for free or for cheap, but that's it. Cut it off. After you've got a small portfolio, even if it's just 1 or 2 projects, you need to start charging a premium. Unless you have a full-time job, you're already taken care of financially, and you're not worried about that aspect of it, and you're just doing this stuff because you enjoy it, that's fine too. But if it's something for work, I mean, hopefully you're enjoying it for work also. But if it's for your income, then make sure that you charge what you're worth, and keep in mind that if you're doing freelance, then you're paying income tax, and you're gonna have to save that money yourself for taxes if you're working in the U.S. or somewhere else that has a similar system. And so you got to charge a lot. So be sure to charge a premium. That way you're not spreading yourself thin. You don't have 5 clients who are paying you $1,000 a piece. You have 1 client who's paying you 5,000. And yeah, so that would be my recommendation. Definitely check out freelance if you're able to get into that area. So Jimen's question is, give some suggestions on how to start freelancing and make a better portfolio. So kind of what I just said. In fact, if you haven't seen it, give me a second. I'm gonna run over to my slide deck here and see if I can share this with you all. Let's see here. I have a slide deck where I talk about how you can do this stuff, freelancing, and it's not super in depth, but it'll get you some of the way. It's a good starting point. And so it covers some of the stuff that I was just telling the previous person with my answer about what to charge, how to charge. If you're going to do it for free, at what point do you stop doing it for free? So let me see here. I think I've almost got it for you here. I have a Medium post too, but I already have the slides up, so I'm just going to do this. All right, so let me share this link. How to make money with web development today is kind of like my introduction to starting your own freelancing gig. And you can get started right away. If you have any type of community where you have friends and family and you're not completely isolated, which hopefully you aren't, and you have people that you can talk to, then those people have small businesses and they know people. Like, you have this network, especially if you're on Facebook, where you can reach out and you can find friends, friends of friends, family, friends of family, etc., who need your services, and you can work something out in the beginning. Where one thing I would say for sure is just be honest about your intellectual ability, like, and when it comes to web development. Don't tell them, oh, I'm going to do this, when you have no idea how to do it, which that kind of thing can be done a little bit later when you are able to do that sort of thing. But when you're first starting out, just let people know, like, I'm still learning. And honestly, you'll be learning for the rest of your career. But at that point, you truly are, the weight of your learning is happening right then at the beginning. And so just tell them, look, I'll cut you a deal. I'm still learning. You help me, I help you. Let me make you a website. And maybe it takes a little bit longer than it takes someone else, but then you're getting a break on the cost. And so you do that for your first 1 or 2 projects. And then once you get the hang of it and you start getting, okay, here's a mistake. Now I know not to do that next time. Okay, this worked, so let me do that again. And you start keeping track of this stuff and figuring out what works and what doesn't. Then you can really start truly charging that premium and making good money as a freelancer. This always happens. I'll be like talking, and just talking too much, too fast, too long, and then I don't give myself a chance to breathe, and I'm just like, it's a workout. Maybe I'm just too out of shape. But when I used to teach in person, I would lecture for like 3 hours straight, and what I would do is I would just lecture so much and talk so much without a break until the point where I had so little oxygen coming in that I would start forgetting things, and I would just blank. I'd be like, what was I even talking about? All right, time for a break. I got to remember to take breaks. All right, so are Git and GitHub difficult to learn? They are not difficult at all. And I have a hour-and-a-half long course that's free, Haseen. You can find it on udemy.com. It's called Intro to Git. And it teaches you pretty much everything that you'll be using in your day-to-day with Git. There's a couple things that are a little more advanced that I left out that you can pick up later on your own. It also teaches you how to connect to GitHub with Git using SSH or HTTPS. Either way, it's fairly simple to get up and running with Git, to start tracking your code, and to commit it to GitHub, push it to GitHub, and be able to have it online as a backup, as a way that you can share and collaborate with other developers. So do yourself a favor. If you're going to be a developer, first of all, you should already have a GitHub account if you don't have one, and you should know how to use Git. It's very easy to use, it's very powerful, and the sooner you start using it, the better, because you don't want to be that person that works your butt off on a project and then your hard drive crashes, or something happens with your cloud storage and you no longer have those files. You want them backed up with GitHub. Okay, so from someone that has studied via online courses only, what things can come as a surprise in an actual workplace? For example, what can come as a surprise? Prototyping tools, team synergy, web solutions, etc. So that's a good question. One thing that can come as a surprise, especially if you're self-taught, is you're in an environment where you're working by yourself and you're learning by yourself mostly. Maybe you get some help from some mentors or from other students in the community, and then you go to the workplace and now all of a sudden you're on a team and you have to do teamwork, like people skills. And maybe you're the type of person that likes to work by yourself. Maybe you're the person that likes to be in charge, but now all of a sudden you're not in charge. You're not in control of the decisions that get made, or your contributions to those decisions aren't necessarily weighing in as heavy as a senior developer, someone that's been there for a while. Those are things that you're not going to learn in these courses, where they're teaching you this is HTML, this is CSS, this is JavaScript, this is Python, Ruby, PHP, Perl, etc. But they're not teaching you people skills. They're not saying, hey, when you get in an environment where you're working on a team, or maybe you have a manager over you, you have to be able to communicate. So they don't teach you about communication. They don't teach you about like humility and some of those things that can help you work better with people. So I would say, if you have the time, I mean, obviously, once you're in that position, you have the role, you're at the job, you're going to have to learn quickly, because I've seen it happen to people where they get a role and maybe they let their pride get in the way, and they no longer are a good culture fit for this company because no one wants to work with them because they're an asshole. And so they get fired, or they have to quit. And that's something they didn't consider. They think, oh, I just have to be good at coding. Well, you have to be good at coding, but you also have to be good with people if you're going to work with people. And so as a developer, you kind of get to pick and choose. If you want to be a freelancer, then you still have to work with your customers, right? But you don't necessarily have to work with other developers. Although I will say it is easier when you work with a team, because then you can delegate stuff and you don't have to worry about covering everything, because building full-on production level applications takes a lot of work, and it's not necessarily always a one-person job. So those are definitely some things that can surprise you in the actual workplace. And so communication skills are key. You want to look into some ways of learning how to communicate with people. There's a thing out there called verbal judo. They use it with like law enforcement and whatnot, people that have to talk through really intense situations, sometimes life and death. And it's also just a good skill to have, just to communicate with people you don't agree with, or even your spouse or your friends, people in your family, etc. So look it up. It's called verbal judo, and maybe that would be something that you'd want to invest a little bit of time in before you go out there and get a job with a team where you have to communicate with people on a daily basis. All right. Good evening, Mark. All right. What is a good project for portfolio of a backend beginner? Like Yelp Camp is all backend except for the HTML, CSS, the rendering of the EJS views, etc. But most of the coding on that is backend. So that's a good project for a beginner. And then stuff that's similar to that, I always tell students, like go out and find a website that you want to replicate. So go make a simplified version of Airbnb or a simplified version of Twitter, and you can do all of that with back-end programming. So those would be some examples of good projects. Wei, you're very welcome. And Antu, by the way, thank you for being such a great communicative mentor for all of us newbies. No problem at all. Thank you for being here, being a part of the audience. I really appreciate everything that you guys give back to me, showing up to these live streams and asking these questions. And I couldn't do it without you, so thank you. Okay, so I have a question and I want to learn mobile development, but should I start with Android first or iOS dev first? And what language for mobile apps should I start, like Flutter, React Native? So if you know JavaScript already, then you can use JavaScript to build mobile applications with something like React Native or Ionic. And I don't know a lot about Flutter, but you could use something like Flutter. Or you can go straight to, and first, before I get off that topic, if you're using React Native, then you can build one app and then ship it to iOS and Android, which is amazing, right? You don't have to worry about the intricacies between the two. Whereas if you use something like Swift, then you're just talking about iOS. Or if you use something like Java for Android, then you're just talking about Android development. So if you already know Swift and you already know Java and you want to just stick with those because you prefer one over the other, that's fine. Or if you know JavaScript, then you can leverage something like React Native and be able to ship to both platforms. So it's up to you which direction you want to go in, but you've got options. Dudley, good evening. Good to see you. Let's see here. Huge thanks to, let's see, starting to get pretty spammy down here towards the bottom. So let me try to work this out for a second and see what we got going on. Huge thanks to Colt and you and Rusty for getting me started with web tech. I'm loving it. Awesome. Really glad to hear that. Stick with it as long as you enjoy it. That's really great. Anquanaut, good to see you again. Hopefully I'm not butchering your name too bad. What are my thoughts on the hacking industry? It can go in a couple different directions. You know, you can be a white hat hacker and you can work on like cybersecurity and stuff. And honestly, when it comes to like, if it were all about the Benjamins, the money, that I would probably want to be in that area because you can make a killing doing cybersecurity. And that's, I mean, that's the future. You think about it, like some of the biggest real world problems that we're having with like United States elections and even elections in other countries have to do with like the lack of good cybersecurity, hackers getting in and manipulating different things, and trolls and whatnot. And so, if you're at the forefront of that, like that's the future. That's like right now we have wars that get fought with bullets and whatnot, but eventually the majority of these things are going to be fought with technology. You know, if you can shut down an entire country's economy, and I'm not saying that you should be the person to do that, I'm just saying that country is going to need people to protect them, and they're going to need hackers and cybersecurity people and people that understand that sort of thing. So in that regard, plenty of work opportunities if that kind of thing interests you. And then there's the other side of the spectrum where there's just people that like to take advantage of other people, scammers and hackers, maybe black hat, I think is what they call them, something like that. But so I think it's pretty obvious that you don't want to do something like that. So, you know, sometimes it's just a kid that's bored that has a computer that, you know, that just has nothing better to do with their time than to see, you know, how far, you know, what they can get away with and how far they can go with that skill. And then there's other people who are just trying to make money off of it, you know, stealing information, selling it on the dark web, stuff like that. So it could go any direction. There's a good side to it and a bad side to it, and then just like a neutral side. There's just people that are just fooling around. They're not harming anything. They're just having fun, and you know, just like anything, it could go any which way, and it's up to you to make sure that if you get involved with it, that you stay ethical. I don't know about the Motorola flip phone. I hadn't seen it. WordPress, good for a job portal site. I'd stay away from WordPress. I used to use it a lot, and now I don't use it at all. And anytime I have a customer who comes back who's using an old WordPress site that I made for them, I immediately recommend that we switch to a different platform. Do you have a CS degree? I do not. Poor Clip Clop. Hey, Clip Clop, he's been around since for a while now. Let's see, my daughter is almost 3. So he's been with us since her, and then now my son he's not yet 1, he's just a few months old. And he's in great condition. We take care of this guy. He's rugged. He's got his little saddle. Boop. Did you know there's a person in there? Well, it's not a person, but it's like a little bear or something. His little friend, he just keeps in his saddle. Anyway, good guy to have around. No problem, no problem. All right, so Ian, I always have a hard time predicting how long a project will take me to complete. Yeah, that is the ticket. If you knew exactly how long things would take, man, if you could build an application that could predict how long things would take, you'd be rich. It's difficult. I struggle with that all the time when I have clients asking me like, okay, I want this, this, and that done. And to protect yourself, you have to put a cushion in there. So you can say, well, I think it would take me, and be generous. If you think it'll take you an hour, then tell them, I think it'll take me 3 hours. And if you can get them to agree to 3 hours, then they'll be really happy when you get it done in an hour and a half or 2 hours. So always give yourself a cushion or a buffer, a little margin there to be able to make sure that you get it done within the time that you. Nothing's worse than telling someone, "Oh, I'll get it done in an hour," and then 3 hours later you're like, "Oh, you owe me an extra blah 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 number of dollars." So. My dog is barking. Hopefully that's not on the microphone too much. Best resource to learn app deployment on the cloud. I would just go to the documentation for whichever cloud platform you're working with. So if you want to deploy to AWS, just go look at AWS documentation. Not that I would recommend AWS, but as much as I don't like Amazon, they pretty much run that area of the industry. So I'm building projects to practice my coding skills, but I have nowhere to get a code review. I feel that I'm building projects without knowing if I'm doing the right things by industry standards. Yep, when you're self-taught, it can be very difficult to know a lot of things, and so it's helpful to have a mentor. So I'm going to share my mentor link down here. Obviously, no pressure or obligation to you to sign up, but if you want help from someone like me, it's available. So if you need a review, you'll have to pay for it, but you'll get what you need. So the link is down there in the live chat, tinyurl.com/devsprout-booking. And the other thing, of course, is just to join a community like a Discord server or a Facebook group where you can share it, and maybe, hopefully somebody will help you out of the kindness of their heart. And there's a lot of people like that in the web development industry who are happy to just help just because they want to give back. So let's see here. No problem, Chewy Chewy. All right, so Mark, I'm gonna go ahead and remove you. And then, yeah, some other people saying chill out. It's unfortunate that there's so many comments I can't monitor it at all times. Maybe in the future I can get other people to help me monitor, but all right, so best resource to learn app deployment on the cloud. I already answered that. Wrong chat, yeah. Where do you think coding will be generally in 10 years? That's kind of a big question, but programming is not going anywhere, obviously. It's like the backbone to technology, and everything relies on it these days. Um, so I don't know where it will advance to. You know, I'm mostly in the web development area, a little bit of automation stuff here and there, but also usually in regards to web. So as far as predictions, I'm not really sure, but we'll just see when we get there, I suppose. So could you please suggest how can I start my programming blog for free? You can program on, or sorry, you can blog on like Medium for free. I do some blogs on Medium, and then you have access to your audience on Medium, or people that are already on Medium, which is nice. You don't have to like try to drive traffic to your website. But ultimately, you'll want to be in control of your audience. You know, if you're using it for monetary gain or income, etc., then you'll want to be able to control, having access to your audience's emails and sending them information and things like that. So you'll want to build your own website. There's plenty of blog platforms out there. I think a good one is called Ghost, if I'm not mistaken, and I think Ghost uses Node. I might be wrong. It might be Ruby, but look into Ghost. That's one, and then look at some of the competitors for Ghost and see what else is out there. And then, of course, you could always just build your own from scratch if you wanted to, but there's already a bunch of tools out there, so no reason to reinvent the wheel. All right, so Benjamin is having difficulty thinking like a programmer, despite being near the end of Colt Steele's Web Developer Bootcamp on Udemy. You lack a CS background, and this shows. So you can fix that. I'm trying to find the link for you right now. Teach yourself. See if I can find it. I'm looking for this website that has all these resources for learning computer science, and it's called teachyourselfcs.com. And so it has books and videos and all these resources. I think all of them are free, most of them anyway. And so if you want to learn computer science, then check out that resource. You don't have to go to a university and spend all that time and money learning something that is available online for free. It's just going to take some time and some discipline, and whether or not you truly want to do it. If the thing about getting stuff for free is you don't have the pressure of just having spent an insane amount of money on an education. So sometimes if you pay for college, or your parents pay for college, or whatever the case may be, even if the state is paying for it, you feel obligated to finish whatever that is, even if you don't like it. And that may be a good or a bad thing. You may find later that you truly do like whatever it is, even though you thought you didn't when it was difficult. So doing it on your own when it's free is great because you're saving a ton of money, and you can do it at your own speed. But you don't have that pressure of like, oh, if you mess this up, then that's $20,000 down the drain or more. And so you got to have discipline if you're going to go that route. But the more that you code, the more stuff you build, the more that you communicate with people in coding communities, and the more you get around people who know more than you do and try to communicate with them, then the more you'll learn. So it takes time. I wouldn't expect someone to just take Colt's course and come out computer whiz and know all these terminology and be able to really just talk all this computer science speak. But if you stick with it and you're diligent and you have the discipline, then eventually you'll find that one day you wake up and you're just like, oh, now I know that stuff, or at least most of it. You'll never know it all. You're always going to be learning. This is an industry where there's industries where you can go to school and learn something, a skill set, a trade, and that's it. At that point, you just do it. You learn little things as you go, and then you become like a professional or an expert. But you don't have to learn anything new necessarily, at least nowhere near the speed of programming. So coding just evolves so quickly that you're always going to be learning. What you learn today and 10 years from now, you'd be like, I'd be surprised if you're using even a fraction of the stuff that you're using today in a decade from now. So keep that in mind. So Dudley asked if I had ever thought about working for the CIA. I thought about working for the FBI. I wanted to get into like cybersecurity as it relates to protecting children on the internet from like predation or whatever you call it, predators, just that kind of horrible stuff that happens in like the dark recesses of the internet. I really, as difficult as it would be to get into that kind of work and the stuff that you would be exposed to, like somebody's got to do it, right? Somebody's got to be an advocate for these kids out here that their parents are so stupid they just let them get on the internet unrestricted, and then they get involved with people that are preying on them. And so there are areas of the FBI and maybe also the CIA and other of those ABC agencies that do that sort of thing. So I had considered that, but it's not super easy to get into that kind of work. So it's definitely something that's in the back of my head. Also, like I said, it's something that would take a huge toll on you emotionally, and probably just in every aspect of your life. It'd be very draining to be exposed to that kind of thing and see that kind of evil. And I think that those people, they don't even allow them to work for extended periods of time before they cycle them through with another set of people that then take over, and then they get a break or whatever it is. But I had considered the ABC agency kind of thing for a while. Dudley, that's a good question. Have I ever used a 3D printer? No, but I want to. It sounds pretty cool. All right, when reviewing someone's code or a technical solution for a potential job, what are some immediate red flags that puts you in the bottom of the pile? So formatting, if someone doesn't know how to format their code, then that's a huge red flag. So if you don't know how to tab your code out, whether you're using 2 spaces or 4 spaces or tabs versus spaces or whatever, if it's not formatted in some way or another, it doesn't matter necessarily what style you choose, but if you just have really garbage formatting, then immediately you're like, this person is an amateur. Let's see here. Some other things would be variable names. If someone's just using really cryptic, short, like acronyms for their variable names that no one else can understand, that's no bueno. Like, you want to see code that reads really well. It doesn't matter who wrote it. You should be able to come behind them and say, okay, I see your code is doing this, with or without comments. Some people prefer to have comments, but if you're really good at writing code, then you don't necessarily need that many comments. Your code should kind of speak for itself. And a lot of languages some languages are geared that way. Like Ruby is written in such a way that it's almost human readable. They try to make it as human readable as possible, so you don't have to write comments. You can just read it and say, yeah, I understand what this code is doing. So readability is key. Formatting helps with that. And stuff like the variable naming is definitely important. And that's just kind of on the surface. Those are some things that would really stand out to me initially. And then you can dive deeper and just be like, why are they doing it this way as opposed to that way? If the code is wet, write everything twice versus dry, do not repeat yourself, then that would stand out to me that person doesn't have a lot of skill, at least not yet. So those are just a couple of things. All right, best resource to learn app deployment on the cloud. That's question just popped up again, I guess. Zishan, how's it going? Vorman, no problem. Dark Spork, hello, good to see you. Learning path for machine learning and artificial intelligence. So if you're looking to learn that stuff for very cheap, then you want to check out topratedtechcourses.com, link down below. Just click on machine learning and you'll see, let's see here. I have it under, machine learning. It's got a couple. And then I've got some stuff on there for computer science, some stuff for algorithms and data structures listed as algos and DS. Those might be some good places to start. So you might want to explore those courses and see if any of them are rated high enough and have exactly what you're looking for. So Zishan's question is that He was doing the Web Development Bootcamp by Colt, but due to some reason he could not complete it. Can I still do it? Is it relevant? Yeah, a lot of the people that are in this chat right now are probably from that course, and while some of the topics in the course are a little bit dated, the majority of the course is still relevant, and the things that are dated aren't dated to where they're obsolete. They're just things that you're going to need to build on top of. So once you learn A, you're going to need to learn, A.1 or B, whatever it builds on. So if you learn JavaScript from Colt's course and ES5 syntax, then you're going to want to upgrade your knowledge with like ES6 all the way through ES Next. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can learn after you take Colt's course. But as far as it still being relevant and something that you would want to do today, the answer would be yes. So Vipul Krishna, I have completed Web Developer Bootcamp by Colt. Should I do a second course, the Advanced Web Developer by Colt Steele? You might try it out and see if it's a good fit for you. I know it doesn't have the same level of support as the Web Developer Bootcamp, so that might be kind of shocking. If you don't want to spend any money, I have a follow-up course for Colt's Web Developer Bootcamp called Code with Node Learn by Doing on Udemy. So you might want to check that out. Again, it is free and it builds on everything that you learned in the Web Developer Bootcamp. But yeah, if you want to take the advanced course, check it out. Of course, you have 30 days to return it if you haven't passed that 30 days yet since you purchased it, and get all of your money back. So if it's not a good fit for you, you can always get a refund. If one doesn't have a computer science degree, is a certificate from a boot camp necessary to get a job, or would one be able to land a job just by demonstrating their knowledge with a portfolio? Definitely don't need any type of certificate from any sort of boot camp. Granted, if you took Colt's course, then that kind of thing might be helpful to put on your resume. But the certificate from like Udemy is, I would be as bold to say that it's worthless. Like, it's just a piece of paper that makes people feel better, or a graphic or whatever that Udemy generates to like give legitimacy to their courses. I'm not trying to take away from the knowledge that you gain from the courses, because it's very valuable and a lot of people have gotten jobs and changed careers from those courses. I'm just saying that the certificate itself is not what's going to get you the job. It's going to be, like you said, your portfolio, your like what's on your resume in terms of projects and things like that. So if you don't have the experience in the portfolio, then it doesn't matter if you have the certificate. But the other way around, if you do have the experience in the portfolio, then again, it doesn't matter if you have a certificate. If you can demonstrate that you know how to do whatever it is that that company is asking you to do for that position, then there's a good chance that you could get that job. Other best courses in the stream. Just go to topratedtechcourses.com and you'll see a bunch of top-rated courses that have been handpicked, and all of them are over 4.5 except for one, and it's 4.4. But they're all good courses. Why good companies does not really ask about tech stack. They always ask about data structures, because they're not as interested in which language you prefer necessarily. Again, they're all just tools. Whatever tool works best for the job at hand. But data structures, that's something that is across the board on all these languages. So it doesn't matter if you know Ruby or Node, you should still know how to write something as simple as FizzBuzz all the way up to implementing your own sort algorithm and stuff like that. And so if you don't know that stuff, then it's just a way for them to weed out certain individuals from the hiring process. All right, so Kieran, hi Ian, I know about you from the Web Dev Bootcamp. I want to be a hardcore web developer. Is there anything I can do to gain confidence in this field? Just build as many projects as you can, or just it could only be one project, but just code as often as you can and expand on that project. The more you learn and the more of these problems that you encounter and then overcome, then the more confident you'll be as a developer. So if your goal is to be a confident developer, then you can't just think about it, you can't just visualize it, you can't just dream about it. You have to sit down and put in the hours and code. So if you want to be a good developer, then you have to code. Just like if you want to be a good race car driver, you would have to go out and race every day. There's no other way about it. So build projects, or just build one project and build on top of that project, but you have to code. So What do you think Node.js and PHP? PHP is still required for a lot of company, but Node is a little bit under PHP for job because you saw a lot of companies still need PHP developers. That just depends on where you are working, like what region or area you're looking for jobs in. So one area, one city, one state, what have you, may be more popular with PHP, whereas another one, at least part of that area, may be more popular with Node.js. So that's just something that will change depending on where it is that you're looking for a job. So again, if you're looking for a job in your city and your city has a majority of PHP jobs and like very little or no Node jobs, then the obvious answer, if you want to work there, is to learn PHP. And vice versa, if you look somewhere else and they don't have any PHP, but they have something like Node and Ruby, etc. So you're just going to have to adapt and learn those languages. All right, C9 is closed now. I had some work there from the boot camp. What can I do to retain my coach from the workspace? Is it possible? No. They gave like 6+ months of time for people to get their data from C9. If you didn't get it, then it is gone, unfortunately. You can download all of Colt's source code from the GitHub repo that's on my GitHub, which is linked in the Udemy course, or yeah, that's the only place to get it from now. So Web Dev Bootcamp repo on my personal GitHub will have all the source code from all the backend projects in Colt's Web Developer Bootcamp. And so you can get the code back for projects that you finish, but it's not going to be your code. Now, you should have been following along pretty closely with Colt's, so it shouldn't be too different. If you had personal projects, that stuff's gone, unfortunately. So Chewy is saying that after finishing Colt's Bootcamp, he's trying to learn some design stuff like CSS and wireframing, and also JavaScript, mean stack, which is Mongo Express, Angular, and Node at the same time. Should you focus on one before the other? I would do it on like an as-needed basis. So it's going to take a lot longer to learn stuff like mean stack than it is just to learn some CSS or wireframing. So I would just build a project with the mean stack while you're learning, and then once you get to the design side and the CSS and all that, then you can take the time that is necessary to pick those skills up. What kind of project do you suggest us to do after your code node? It depends on what your goals are. If you want to work in freelance, or if you are trying to add stuff to your portfolio, then you'll want to go seek out people that need real world apps and then you can build them for them. Or if you can't find that sort of thing, or that's not something that interests you, then you're just going to have to come up with some dummy apps to make. And at that point, I mean, sky's the limit. Just use your creativity and come up with something. Typically, when you're building an app, you just have to ask yourself the question, like, what is a problem that I would like to be solved with an app? Or if it's already being solved by an app, but the app's not doing a good job of solving it the way that you would like, then how can you expand on somebody else's application? What are microservices and why are they considered better for building a scalable application? How do you start with it? You're very welcome. All right, microservices in a nutshell is kind of like a modular pattern when it comes to not just necessarily web development, but we'll stick with web development for now. Let's say that you have a backend with Node or Ruby or Python, doesn't really matter, and your backend has your API. And so it has all these endpoints that you can access and manipulate and do CRUD operations and whatnot with the data in your database that's connected to that backend. Then you have a front end that uses React. And so instead of building them together in the same app, you would separate them out where you have a React application that then interacts with the API from the backend. And then you also have like a React Native mobile application that still sends requests to that backend's API. And maybe you have a couple other different things that also access the API in one way or another. And who knows, you might even have more than one API. But in this case, we'll just stick with one backend, one API that's connected to one database. And then you have these different microservices, which are basically, it's just picking apart, like you have So the opposite of microservice would be a monolithic application, like what you build in Colt Steele's Web Developer Bootcamp, where you're using Node.js and Express to build out this application, but you handle the rendering of the front end, the stuff that the user sees when they visit the website, with EJS, which is, in this case, a back-end templating engine. And so you're handling the rendering of those views and everything on the server. It makes an HTML page that it then sends to the user on the front end as a response, and then that's what loads on the user's browser. But if you want to separate out what happens on the front end versus what happens on the back end, then you could turn it into microservices. So you have your server and you separate that from the front end, where you have React or Angular or Vue, and then maybe you even have a mobile application, and then some huge applications will have even more stuff happening. And so each one of those things is what makes up this like microservice pattern. That's in a nutshell what it is. You can actually just look up what are microservices on Google, and there's going to be some good resources there for you. So yeah, we're at an hour now, so I'm going to cut it off after Nick's comment. So Zishan is saying, best book for JavaScript, and thanks. No problem, Zishan. Appreciate you stopping by and asking questions. I have never read a book on JavaScript, so I don't have necessarily the best advice, but I do have, I'll just read off a couple titles to you real quick. Udemy's Q&A bug that they have is so annoying. All right. Eloquent JavaScript, and then JavaScript, the good parts. And then there's one more. Let me click on this and see what it's called. JavaScript Allonge. I think I'm pronouncing that right. The 6th edition. So just to reiterate those, JavaScript Allonge, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, and then JavaScript, the good parts, and Eloquent JavaScript are 3 good JavaScript books. And they might be a little dated at this point unless they come out with newer versions, which some of them probably have newer versions, so worthwhile to look into. And then there's a book I read on React like a year or two ago that was really good. Unfortunately, I can't like pull it out of a hat. I have a video, if you go back in time on my YouTube, through my videos, there's a video where I talk about that book for learning React. But you'd have to do some digging because I can't remember the name offhand, unfortunately. But yeah, those are a couple books that you could look into if you're interested in reading, whether a PDF form or Kindle or even a hardback, or not hardback, but maybe just a regular book. So, Nick, thank you for answering my questions. Hello from Italy. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in. And for anybody that's still here, appreciate you being here. Of course, if you like this sort of thing and you want to support me, this is usually when people start dropping out, when I start asking for money. But I'll share my link to my PayPal. Any contribution is welcome. You know, it's small stuff like that that helps me buy the coffee that fuels these hour-long streaming sessions each day. So any support is appreciated, and I don't really know if this is a thing, but if you have a channel or you know, a blog or anything that you want to have listed, reach out to me and maybe I can help you do that, get you a shout out and help you get started. So I know that might be helpful to some people to be able to get that type of publicity. So anyway, thanks for any support. Also, you just being here and asking questions is wonderful in and of itself. So thank you for that. And of course, if you're looking for anything new to learn, then be sure and check out topratedtechcourses.com. Constantly working on that website and trying to make it better and more useful for people that are trying to learn how to code and who don't want to break the bank doing so. So thanks again, everyone. That's it for this session, and we'll catch you in the next one. See you later.